Macca lacka hi, macca hiney hiney ho. Do you ever watch a movie trailer for the very first time and get injected with the most random sense of hope? Like, not that cinema has returned, but more so that this movie might speak to you in a way that you may not be able to speak to some of your friends about. That is how I felt with Ari Aster's third feature-length film, Beau is Afraid, when I originally saw the trailer. Um, Ended up paying for the matinee opening day at 12 p.m. And here I am a couple years later, still mad about it. Most publications that I tried to look up the synopsis for this movie only call this an odyssey of Beau trying to get home to his mother. Meanwhile, Wikipedia has reduced this whole 3 hour film down to just 6 paragraphs worth of subject, which granted is fine because a bunch of nothing happens in this movie. I'll get to why I'm a little bit more booty tickled towards the end of this video, but in the meantime, I'm hoping to save you the 3 hours with this, whatever this is. So the movie opens up on a black screen, and this is how I know I've already watched too many movies, because I hear this woman screaming and think to myself, is that Patty LuPone? You hear this mother freaking out that her baby is quiet after having given birth, so the doctor slaps the baby's ass, and that is the transition into the title card, Beau is Afraid. Flash forward X amount of years, Beau is a mid to late 50s gentleman sitting in his therapist's office, quite frail and clearly can't exactly take care of himself, because the first concern he brings up to his therapist is Beau says that he drinks mouthwash, and that is just completely ignored by the therapist. This therapist seems to be a little bit more concerned with Beau's trip about to go home to visit his mother, not in a concerned manner, but more so just trying to get the dirt. Like, it doesn't take long for you to feel like the therapist is skeevy. As the therapist is asking about Beau's reservations for going home, the only note he tends to write down in his notepad is just the word guilty. He asks Beau these very cryptic questions that personally I would not ask somebody if I was trying to talk them into going to something they did not want to go to. He said something along the lines of like, if you were to drink from a well and it poisoned you, would you go back expecting it to be safe? Beau goes on to try and tell his therapist about a dream he had last night of a mother and boy struggling in a bathroom. This is the start of one of my personal frustrations of this movie, and it's that nobody ever talks about what somebody is trying to bring up. Like, anyway, this session ends with the therapist asking Beau how's the hydrotrypnol doing, which is a fictional drug. I had to look up both the drugs that were prescribed to Beau. They're all fictional. This whole movie's bullshit. Beau's getting this new prescription because his last one, the hydrotrypnol, whatever the fuck, it made his eyes itchy. So he got a new one called Zipnotricril and warns Beau never to take without drinking water or could be deadly. Oh, goodness, little attention whore. You just want to be in my lap? Come on. As Beau's leaving the office, the psych tells him to break a leg. While Beau is walking home from his apartment, you see shots of a gun enthusiast trying to sell some rifles to a kid. And then you also see a mom rushing up to her son, yelling at him, "Listen to your mother!" While he's playing with a toy boat. Um, as Beau's trying to buy this little mother and son statue, he sees this guy about to jump off of a skyscraper, and all the other people are just recording in glee. Spoiler alert, this is supposed to be like the bear tapestry scene in Midsummer or the dollhouse scene in Hereditary, where like it tells you the whole story in the beginning. So Beau buys this motherly statue, and then the scene just cuts to a corpse on a night street, and this taxi drives around it. You see a prostitute dragging a John to her next wherever the fuck. There's like a Santa Claus that's like trying to stab a dude. One like little piece of comedy I did get was there was like this dude that was in Daisy Dukes the whole time who was like flamboyantly dancing outside of a liquor store. That was kind of funny. And then finally, you see Beau running into the screen, being chased by some systematically tattooed and packed individual. And he's chasing Beau into his apartment complex like some sort of reverse Get Out. For lack of better words, and because um, Beau's apartment complex is a little ghetto. There's like all these posters around the apartment complex for a single brown recluse spider. And then for whatever reason, there's a Winston Churchill quote under it that says, "The price of greatness is responsibility." Yeah, fuck him. Which, by the way, when Beau gets into his apartment, that one brown recluse is, oh, how serendipitously going under his couch. Beau has a pretty sad life, a lot of microwave meals. He kind of just like watches TV from his bed with his shirt off. This is where he does like one of the movie's tropes that I can't stand, which is a flashback that's not really a flashback. It's like where a character gives you a Kubrick stare, but like you hear like music shift in the background, but nothing, you're just supposed to know they're thinking. So what causes this Kubrick stare is Beau sees a picture of his childhood crush, Elaine. When he snaps out of this, he's then starting to watch the news about the birthday boy stab man that's been around his city. Beau begins to fall asleep at 11:42 p.m., and then he wakes up around 1:05 a.m. to one of his neighbors banging on his door. Beau goes to look through the peephole, of course, and there's nobody there. A note slides under his door that says, "Would you please keep the music down? Some of us are trying to sleep." Mind you, Beau is alone in his apartment. He lives with nobody. He's already turned the TV off at this point. The only noise you hear is his annoying neighbor who does not shut the fuck up. I don't know who her man cheated on her with, but she just won't let it go. Flash forward to 2:43. Beau gets another, a little bit slightly angrier knock at the door, and then the note starts to say, "Please, please, you're depriving people of sleep." By 3:19, it's an angry, desperate knock. And if this part were in a better movie, I would have actually gotten chills. But instead of Beau having to get up to the door, the note slides all the way over to him at where he's sitting in bed. The neighbor's pissed and starts playing his own music through the walls. Meanwhile, Beau isn't doing anything. He just tries to get some more sleep through all the noise, and he ends up sleeping through his alarm. In his rush, Beau leaves his key in the doorknob and his bag outside of the doorway, and at some point he realized he forgot his dental floss. Once he realizes his stuff's gone, he only passes by the janitor, who looks like a piece of shit anyway, and the janitor only says to Beau, "You're fixed, pal." Beau's very shaken up that he has to call his mom and tell her that he's gonna miss his flight, and Ari Aster really wants to hammer home that generational guilt is one of the themes of this movie. Because you hear Patty Lupone on the other side of the call, and she first starts off asking hurriedly questions about when are you going to get here, not about his stuff whatsoever. She could get it. But then it goes to that parental silent treatment. And of course, that wheedles Beau down into just being like, "Mom, I'm sorry. Mom, I'm sorry. What do you want me to do?" See, he won't grow up and be a big boy and try and figure something out to try and make her happy. Instead, he's asking her what she wants. Mona hits it home by saying, "You know what? Don't worry. I will come to you next time, so it's not so much of a worry. I'm sure you will do the right thing, sweetie." Beau sits with his panic for a little bit, and in his own paranoia, he starts to believe that the neighbor that was knocking on his door last night is going to come in to try and kill him. He runs to that new drug that his therapist had given him, only to find out that his water pipes conveniently do not work. He has no bottled water in his apartment, and his neighbor is still yelling at her man. Beau makes himself throw up the pill, I guess. And I don't remember that part specifically, but then the next shot is just of him Googling what's going to happen if he takes the pill without water. Which, when he does Google search that, his father's obituary comes up first. Beau, deciding that he has to cross the street with all these criminals and unkemps, he goes over to the liquor store. There is one part that made me a little uneasy, and I don't think it was the type of uneasy Aster was going for, because as Beau was running across the street, there was one singular dude who was just going, "Help me, help me, help me." And granted, there was a dude getting assaulted in the background, but that was it. Everybody else was just minding their own fucking business. And while Beau got into the convenience store, you see this guy at the window, "Help me, help me, help me." Beau does what anyone in that general area would do, and he opens up the water bottle before paying for it. So he goes up to pay for it, his card declines, cashier's not happy, and he threatens to call the cops on Beau over 30 cents. I forgot to mention, since Beau doesn't have his key, he has no way to get back into the apartment complex without another person, so he decided to put down a telephone book. So his money is not his main concern at this point, okay? He just wants to make sure that none of these homeless people are going into his apartment complex. But of course, as his card is declining and as he's trying to get the remaining cash for this cashier, just like a triad, not triad, a conclave. A lot of people go into the apartment complex that shouldn't. I don't really want to give this movie any flowers, but I will say this scene encapsulated something I run into socially quite often. It's this kind of feeling I get where I'm giving off the general vibe of, "Somebody please help me. I don't know where I am. Clearly my body language is not giving off that I know where the fuck I am." And then as Beau is hurrying, Beau asks the cashier, "Can you please give me a second and hold on?" The cashier just responds with, "Hey buddy, you don't have to raise your voice and yell." You are not helping me get out of your life quicker, sir. Beau just runs out. He tries to beat the crowd before they remove the blockade from him, but unfortunately, as he reaches the door shuts and locks on him. The only other person in the street besides Beau is the corpse the taxi drove around. Beau just stands in the street for hours on end, and you know that because there's this Wes Anderson-y shift from night to day. He watches on the outside of his apartment from a construction support, and he sees that tattooed individual who followed him into his apartment complex, or tried to. He watches from outside of his apartment from a construction support. He sees that specific guy that chased him into his apartment earlier in the movie going through his fridge. There's a blender of brown stuff that I assume is a chocolate milkshake, but knowing Ari Aster, it's not. Flash to morning, Beau is asleep against a pole facing his apartment, and there's a construction worker who's just letting sawdust fall on Beau as if he just did not exist at all. His apartment's finally empty, by the way. The front door to his apartment complex had been broken into at some point during the night, so Beau just walked through up to his apartment. He sees the guy who chased him into his apartment holding his phone conveniently enough, about to dial 911, because unfortunately, Tattoo Man was bitten by the brown recluse. Beau could give a shit though. He just goes in to take a bath because he also sees that his water is back on. While Beau is waiting for his bathtub water to fill, he goes to search to see if he can replace his plane ticket while there's a shoe through his desk monitor. Meanwhile, Bill Hader ends up making a cameo. He plays a UPS driver who walked into Beau's mom's house because he smelled a rancid smell and there were dogs barking. And there's this really stupid moment where Beau doesn't want to believe his mom's dead, right? And then Bill Hader says, well, maybe you called the wrong number. Okay. It says mom in his phone, but okay. So he calls Bill Hader back, and Bill Hader just says he's sorry. Beau is shocked to the point that his bathtub overfills and his apartment living room is drenched as well. Might as well still take a bath. So he tries to leave a voicemail for his therapist, but creepily enough, his therapist's voicemail says, I'm so sorry at the end. That causes another one of those flashbacks. It's not really a flashback. Now, for some reason, there's this fat, racially ambiguous man who's doing the Kill Bill I can't let Oren Ishii see me on Beau's roof. And he's also making a face at Beau, just like, this was really one of those things where I wanted to go back and watch and find where exactly the meaning lies with it. Because with Ari Aster, usually little plot devices aren't there unless it has some sort of payoff, usually, right? Now, the brown recluse like crawls across racially ambiguous man's face, making him fall on top of Beau. And then there's a solid 37 seconds where they reenact that one scene from Borat that was a shameful sexual awakening for me. Beau runs out into his street completely naked, and conveniently enough, birthday boy stab man is right outside his door, and he sees Beau, tries to stab him, and there's just so much pain in this scene. Beau runs away from Birthday Boy Stemma. At some point, he picked up the Motherly statue, by the way. He runs to a cop, and this cop just assumes it's a weapon or that Beau is Birthday Boy Stab Man. So Beau runs away, and then he gets hit by a truck. There was also another one of those moments that made me feel uneasy for the wrong reasons. Mostly because I already kind of had to figure out of what direction this movie was gonna go in with the whole "I'm so sorry" and like now in this confusion with the cop keeps saying to Beau, "Please don't make me do this." He's not even like he's holding the gun to Beau, but he's not threatening to shoot him genuinely. In his fear, Beau drops the mother son statue that he had been gripping this whole time, and it shatters on the floor. Beau runs away and gets hit by a truck. Genuine flashback slash coma dream. You see that mother and the son struggling in the bathroom that Beau tried to mention in his therapist's office earlier. The mother notices the camera and starts yelling at it, but you really only hear bird noises come out of her mouth. Beau wakes up and he's in some girl's bedroom. The mother statue repaired next to him, and there's a nurse alert button on his bedside. After clicking the button, this very sweet blonde woman peeks her head through the door asking if he's awake. She tells him that she hit him with his truck and he had been out for 2 days. And not only that, Birthday Boy Stab Man stabbed down and just was stabbing an unconscious Beau. This woman is named Grace, and her husband is a surgeon named Roger, played by Nathan Lane. He's rocking that mustache in this movie. I don't care if he's a pill pusher, he was hot. Beau begins to remember the fact that his mother had supposedly been decapitated at some point. I forgot to mention, yeah, UPS decapitated. The two of them have a deceased military son who is lost in action in Venezuela. They're somewhat fostering one of the dead son's friends, a man named Jeeves who has PTSD like a motherfucker. We also get introduced to their daughter Tony, who is arguably the worst character in this whole movie, and yet somehow the most well-rounded one of this whole bunch as well. Tony has that very generic teen boredom Audrey Plaza voice. She pops pills like they're fucking mini M&Ms. As Beau's settling in, he tries to call his mom's attorney, who is voiced by Richard Kind. As he's on the phone, Jeeves is in the background. I guess this is supposed to be like some sort of like comedic relief. Grace is in the background trying to fight him because Jeeves is like acting like he's in Vietnam or something. None of it is genuinely funny because the entire time that they are wrestling in the background, you hear Beau getting berated by his mom's attorney using the old Jewish proverb, what was it? It shall not remain all night. He then goes on to tell Beau how his mom is not getting any rest since she cannot be buried until Beau is there as per her request. Therefore, none of her genuinely loved ones can get any rest either. In the background, Grace sleeper holds Jeeves into finally shutting the fuck up, and Beau starts to plead that he needs to get home to his mother. Grace and Richard say that they're looking out for Beau's health, so they keep emphasizing how they're going to have to wait a few days for Beau's stab wounds to fully heal. Not even fully heal, but heal enough so that he can travel. Beau actually knows for a fact that the house that he's supposed to see his mom at is only 6 hours away. But for whatever reason, Nathan Lane tells Beau he can't leave until after the show. Tony's recording all this from her phone, from a window, by the way, and just popping pills still. Go, Tony. There's a small scene of Richard, Grace, and Beau doing a puzzle in the living room with Vanessa Carlton's A Thousand Miles playing in the background, and that got a chuckle out of me. Flash forward, in the middle of the night, Beau walks out to go pee, and for whatever reason, Tony's awake, still recording him as he's walking out, and just like with her pills. Like a gentleman, Beau offers quite a few times to switch with Tony, and all Tony does is tell him to sit his ass in her bed and close the door. Doesn't even get to pee. After finally getting comfy, Beau sees Tony angrily walk out to the trailer that Jeeves sleeps in, bangs on his door to wake him up, and by their body language, you could tell that they're talking about him, and then they do that really creepy, hold on, baby. Right. So flash forward to the next morning. I don't think Beau got any sleep, and then Tony's screaming in her room about how Beau moved everything around. Jeeves is staring at Beau through the back door for whatever reason. And as Grace gets ready for work, Richard is starting to get ready to take Beau to hit the road to go to his mom's. Conveniently, Richard gets a call from where he does his surgeries, and they tell him he needs to do an emergency surgery stat, meaning he can't take Beau. Through Beau's begging, Richard for some reason tells Beau that this is your decision. Side note, this is the 1 hour mark and nothing's happened. Also, it just barely hit me. Why didn't he ask for a cab, baby? Why didn't he just ask for a cab? In his panic that he will definitely not be leaving, Beau opens up his stab wound. Richard does not even try to fix him up one bit. And Grace rushes out of the house too, but she hands Beau a mug with a napkin that says, "Stop incriminating yourself first." And when Beau tries to talk to her about it, of course she ignores him. In case he didn't come to this conclusion, Beau says that he needs to leave. But first, he has to look up her obituary and details about her death for why? I don't know. Just look it up later, dude. Until rewatching, I didn't realize that Parker Posey was in this movie. I'm really sad knowing what happens to her character, but I'm really glad because I like her range. Parker Posey plays Elaine, and assuredly the Elaine from Beau's Polaroid picture earlier. With Beau recognizing who she is and realizing that she works for his mom, he vomits all over Tony's computer. Tony just so happened to walk in saying that she's gonna take him. Beau says he's gonna clean it up, and then very nervously says like, "Well, your dad said you were gonna take me." And then Tony screams back at him, "Who the fuck do you think told you?" They get in the car. Tony has a friend sitting in shotgun who is like this cheerleader who barely says anything. She's on her phone the entire time that she's on screen. While driving, the two teenage girls offer Beau a joint, and they don't disclose what it is other than that it's 3 things. They peer pressure Beau into having this undisclosed joint, and they lock the windows to prevent him from letting any of it out whatsoever to let him get any breath. While they're pressuring him, they threaten that they're gonna tell Tony's dad that Beau punched her in the face or some shit. Cheerleader friend is saying that she's going to back her up even though she's recording Beau this entire time and everything that's being said. I mean, I get I'm an example that like videos can be edited, but like, come on, man. It's got to start very naturally. Beau pretty much realizes that they're driving in circles, and he has a flashback to a cruise that him and his mom were on when he was a teenage boy. That was the first time Beau had also ever set eyes on Elaine, and for him, it was love at first sight. At some point during the cruise, Elaine starts banging on every cabin door saying that there's a dead body in the pool, and Beau uses that as his chance to talk to his crush. It's kind of pretty clear Elaine's parents probably just got divorced or something because she's going through that teenage rebellion and I want the attention phase. Later in the night, Beau is sharing a bed with his mom, and his mom makes a comment that she notices him noticing other women. Um, she says very groomy stuff like, only women understand women. She calls Elaine confident and self possessed. That any woman would be so lucky to have Beau, and there's no more important choice in life than finding the correct partner. This is his mother saying all this, by the way. The next night, while at the vanity, Beau's mom is brushing her hair and she asks Beau if he'd rather she stay up to stargaze or if she'd go to bed. Beau's quiet to that very gross question, and so she says that she's gonna go to bed. Beau goes off and hangs with Elaine, and she ends up asking if Beau thinks that his mom is a cunt. She asks if he's a virgin and that if he's ever had his first kiss, which leads Elaine to pressure Beau into his very first kiss. Beau then somewhat opens up to Elaine that he may have a genetic heart murmur that prevents him to have sex because if he climaxes, he could have a heart attack. At some point later in the night, Elaine's mom takes her off the ship. Didn't know that was a possibility unless it was a medical emergency. So Elaine busts into Beau's suite and she just starts screaming how much she loves Beau. She leaves him the Polaroid that we saw at the beginning of the movie. She kisses him never to forget her. And then Beau's mom starts to freak out a little bit, asking what the fuck happened with her. Tell me, did anything happen with her? Um, this goes into one of my personal favorite transitions in movies where you know it's a dream and then the dream ends quickly with a random different line that fades into whatever the scene is. In this case, Beau's mom then screamed, "He's on the couch," meaning Tony was freaking the fuck out that Beau was asleep on the couch where Tony was supposed to be sleeping. She didn't want to go back to her room for whatever reason. Instead, she goes to bang on Jeeves' door again. Beau is still groggy from whatever it is that Tony gave him, so he doesn't have time to react to the fact that Jeeves busts through the kitchen door with a ton of tranquilizers in his back. Rich and Grace just end up getting Jeeves out cold, and then they end up moving Beau out of the room, assumedly. Flash forward to the next morning, Nathan Lane is more so excited to grill for the whole family since this is Beau's going away party in a sense. As Grace is serving Beau his breakfast, she tries to whisper something in his ear but is getting interrupted constantly. Grace ends up getting a chance to whisper in Beau's ear to turn to channel 78, and when he does, it turns out to be surveillance footage of the very room that Beau is standing in. Beau rewinds the footage a little bit, at least back to where Jeeves was tranquilized, and then he decides to fast forward. This is where it gets a little bit bizarre because Tony starts to walk through the living room, even though she had not done so this scene with a couple buckets. And then as it flashes forward even more, much quicker, you start to see glimpses of what's going to happen later on in the movie. Are they exciting? No. Tony screams and gets Beau's attention, and she lets him know that they're about to go paint her dead brother's room to put some more color into it. She frantically paints over all the posters and stuff. I think she puts down Beau's name, and clearly she's trying to frame him. Beau very calmly tries to talk her down from whatever the hell it is she's doing. She begins to have a full-on breakdown because she admits it to the fact that she's scared that Beau is there to replace her and change up the family dynamic as a whole. Tony then goes to offer a kumbaya by the both of them huffing the cans of paint. Beau's still trying to talk her down for whatever reason. It doesn't work. Tony swallows a bucket of blue paint, and it's a disturbingly beautiful scene for what it is. So Grace ends up hearing the struggle. She breaks into the room to try and see Beau trying to scrape the blue paint out of Tony's mouth. He completely drops what is now Tony's dead corpse. Um, Grace tries to give her baby CPR, getting the blue paint on her mouth herself, and Grace completely 180s on Beau. She says that she now sees him for the monster that he is, and I genuinely think Grace's last line in this movie is Jeeves! Rip him apart! Beau escapes, runs through the forest with his motherly statue, and knocks himself out. This is the point where I rewatched this. I didn't realize this the first time watching the movie, but that is the convenient scene change in this movie. Beau hits himself with a tree, or just gets knocked the fuck out, and then they conveniently change set piece. Another coma dream where Beau sees his mother closing an attic door. Beau awakens in the middle of the forest and wanders around for a little bit. Um, there's not really a discernible amount of time for how long Beau is wandering, but he's definitely been knocked out for less than 24 hours, and then between when he was at the house and between when the next plot device is. A very sweet woman ends up coming across Beau in some cottagecore clothes, and she's humming to herself as she's picking berries. That's totally not the plot of a Twilight Zone episode. She's genuinely nice to him, though. Preggers is fucked, so you know she's probably dead later. She helps Beau tend to some of his wounds, help him take a shard of glass that's been in his forehead this whole time out, and then she takes him back to her little camp for a little bit. There's this whole troupe of musical theater nerds in the forest called the Orphans of the Forest. They move around the forest building their own reject Renaissance fair setup. Half of their lore is just given by a very tall black man in a ladybug costume. He doesn't appear ever again, but I'm calling him Dottie. They give Beau some clothes befitting of the play because they have this whole, like, we're trying to immerse the audience with the play BS going on. There's a quick flash of Jeeves running to try and track Beau down. He now is like a whole arsenal on his back, and he has a tracker on his phone. Beau sits down to enjoy the play, and then he sees this man in a suit who's just asking some of the other random people. They're like, hey, can you please tell me where the heck I am? And I have no clue who this dude is. Like, I recognize who. Sorry, baby. Like, I recognize who Richard Kind is. That was not him. So it was not his mom's lawyer to try and represent like Beau having some of his time running out. It wasn't someone we've heard him talk to before over the phone, so it really doesn't fit the surveillance narrative either. Now this bullshit play sequence begins, and I think I'm just going to read you the notes verbatim of what I wrote down because it goes on for so long and nothing happens. Now this bullshit play sequence begins. This dude comes on stage screaming his house is burned and he's exiled. He's crying next to two gravestones, bitching and moaning about his loss of parents and loss of self. The stage does have a nice change of scenes you would get from an old-fashioned stage production. Some angel comes down to say he cried so much his parents told him to get the fuck up and go do something, make a home of his own to set his roots, but he's chained down so his parents' wish is kind of counterintuitive. Super long silent shots of the audience. Beau starts to immerse himself when the main play character breaks his chain. Now, I want to preface the scene is extremely well done, where everything but Joaquin has this Van Gogh-esque filter. Every other human is wearing a white mask that gets animated over with basic faces, and a setting that truly makes you forget that you were only halfway through this movie. In Beau's psychosis, he views himself walk in place of this character while the angel narrating a generic traveler's tale of walking till you find a place you want to call home, getting a career as a shopkeep, build a house himself, make a nice garden, grow a beard to slightly signify time passed, meet a woman in the woods, fall in love, start having kids. Sometimes his wife will look like a man to him. I don't know what that says about Beau. He has 3 sons in this fantasy. One grows into a worker, one a fighter, and one a scholar. His therapist is brought up as archiving his journeys. A storm sweeps through and destroys Beau's imaginary village and carried away by a great flood. Separated from his family, deposited in a strange country, searching years for his family, coming across a plagued village, condemned for the fall of the city without proof, flee from prison, get older, a bunch of placeholder text about nature showing passage of time, to the point Beau forgets his family existence. The angel comes to a geriatric Beau to ask why he's crying, tell him to confess, and he knows what to confess to. At this point, do I as an audience member know how he's supposed to confess to? Nope, I've just watched a giant man-child bumble around the stage for an hour and a half. He's going to drink some water, and his village is going to return where no one recognizes him as such an old man. His village puts on a play as he's spending his last dollar on the play, was basically finishing when an angel stops narrating. Beau, now an old man in the audience, seeing 3 older men on stage asking where their father and village went. The narrator of the play then points out that Beau feels like the story is his, and Beau, like, stands up in the crowd. This is my story! Oh, I'm just going to keep reading the notes here. As Beau screams that this was his story, the narrator kept going while the three young men recognized their father. A sweet reunion would be happening if I was given enough time to care about any of these characters. During this whole thing, there's like an unsettling clip of Beau's mom over a younger Beau, basically telling Beau why he can't reproduce. She tells him, "Your daddy came inside of me and he had a heart attack." It's not really how this scene goes. It's very like incestual because it looks like she's straddling her son. She then goes on to tell Beau that he has the same heart murmur that caused his father to die. And while losing Beau's father was so much pain, it was worth the greatest gift that she had ever been given, which had been Beau. All that's happening while he's like laying in bed, like clearly about to knock the fuck out. Back to the notes. Beau tells his boys how he looked for them for so long, crying and hugging them. If my dad didn't love me properly as a child, I would think this 2-minute hug fest was pretty gay. The boys ask where their mother was, raised as orphans. They hug again. I forgot about that already. The sons ask if any other family lasted besides them. Beau admits he never had any other children because of his heart murmur, so they ask, then how were we born? That is the cut at the end of that movie, and then that is where Preggers McGee asks Beau if he's okay. I also wrote down this Van Gogh scene goes on for 20 minutes and 21 seconds, just basically to be a mid-movie catch-up in case you took a shit after realizing nothing in this movie really happens. The pregnant lady gives Beau this undisclosed tea, which in her condition, I don't even think she should be drinking. And this is where Beau ends up parting with the mother and son statue that he's been holding onto this entire movie. He decides he wants to give his new pregnant friend the statue. At this point, the dude who played Death in Supernatural pops up. And I just want to clarify, he was not the dude in the suit earlier who was asking where he is. So I'm glad he still gets work. He really does good in everything he does. Anyway, he ends up telling Beau he used to be a butler for Beau's mom. And because Beau is a schizophrenic sociopath, he thinks that's his dad. Butler Death Dude decides to say that he's kidding about the whole thing, but then he caps it off with, I've really missed you. As the play is going on still, you hear this beeping in the distance, and because there's that whole audience immersion thing, the guy who's the main actor decides that he's going to call out to wherever that beeping is coming from. The actor on stage who called out to Jeeves just got an arrow straight to the gut. I don't think it was a fatal shot, but it definitely was not pleasant. Mr. Death Dude goes on to tell Beau to run, and then a bomb goes off in the middle. I don't know when did Jeeves have the time to plant a bomb there? How convenient. I will say there is this really funny moment where one of the play actors sneaks up behind Jeeves as Jeeves is doing like a semi-automatic rifle thing, and Jeeves is knocked to the ground, and Jeeves' gun goes into his chest through Jeeves, and then the actor that knocked Jeeves out with the pan is doing that new actor I'm getting shot dance. Jeeves screams out in pain, and through his tracking app, he like knocks Beau out somehow. And yes, this is the third fucking time it was a knockout transition. Beau has another dream of his younger self in the bathtub. His mother is washing his hair, and then she changes her attention over to the little boy standing over in the doorway. And that is where we find out that that was not really Beau standing in his dream in the first place. Beau's brother goes on to ask where their father is. Their mother, Mona, is really good at playing up that parental guilt shit, supposedly, because she goes on to ask Beau, do you want to see your daddy too? Why are you hurting me like this? So through some fighting, Beau's mom yanks away Beau's brother, and that's where we see the connection to the other dream of Beau's mom shutting the attic door. Also, at this point, they randomly decided to swap in Patti LuPone for the younger actress that had been playing the mother in all the flashbacks this whole time. I didn't think that was just a good idea to do in the first place. You're wasting enough of her time. So Beau's mom locks Beau's brother away into the attic, and then she very defiantly says that we don't talk about him anymore. Beau wakes up in the forest again. This time it's early morning. He gets out to the main road where a grandpa gives him a ride. Honestly, I would have made some very inappropriate comments about this grandpa until I found out it was John Walsh from America's Most Wanted. 2-hour mark. 2/3 of the fucking way done. Beau gets back to his fictional town of Wasserton, which is actually a play on his last name, Wasserman. I don't know if I ever brought up his last name. Beau arrives just as workers are cleaning up the mother's wake. As Beau is going through his childhood home, you can hear a radio broadcast of Mona's wake, and the priest, whatever you want to call him, is just calling out Beau for not being there for most of that broadcast. Beau goes over to what I guess would be the ballroom to see the impact point of where the chandelier had fallen. Um, the entire space had been clean of any blood, but the impact point and the chandelier on the ground itself were pretty much untouched. He then goes over to see his mom's body on display with her head just completely cut off. And there's a moment where Beau goes out to reach the hand of his mother's corpse. Here you see Beau sitting sadly on a random ledge above this entire ballroom. And it's one of the clips that we actually got to see when Beau fast forwarded the surveillance footage earlier at Richard and Grace's. Now, this is probably one of the few Easter eggs I genuinely enjoyed in the movie, where Beau is going down a spiral staircase in his home. There's a bunch of pictures throughout his childhood of him and Mona, and where he decides to stop is a picture of him where exactly he had switched to channel 78 over at Richard and Grace's. He moves over to his mother's office where he sees a bunch of advertisements for her company, which turns out to be the best surveillance company in the entire world. All these ads are also of Beau throughout the years. He was pretty much the mascot of their company. Beau also ends up finding one of those like giant picture collages where as you get closer to it, you can see that it's made out of tinier pictures. All these pictures being employees of Mona's security company. Now, Beau's attention is quickly pointed over to Elaine, but if you pause it at this moment, you could see an tattooed individual that chased Beau into his apartment complex earlier in the movie, and Richard right next to Elaine. Oh, there's also the woodman. There's also like this dude in the Woodland Man part where he's like sitting above watching everybody. I want to say he's part of the collage too. Beau ends up falling asleep on a couch and he awakens when a woman walks through the door. She didn't realize that the wake was at 8 p.m. instead of a.m. Yeah, that's such an easy mistake to make. Beau had immediately recognized his childhood crush, Elaine. Now, she didn't recognize him that much at first, and then he finally opened up that he met her on that cruise. And he ended up asking her if she ended up keeping that promise that they ended up making when she was taken off the ship. Blair seems to have grown into her sluttiness, and she admits to Beau that they were just kids. That was a whimsical wish, um, but it did not happen on her end. Where Beau finally admits that he did, in fact, wait for her. She, as a character, found that cute, and so she immediately talks him into just walking straight to Mona's bedroom. Elaine tells Beau to go get ready in the bathroom, and she kind of just takes the chance to go through Mona's shit. Beau, being a virgin, he comes out in his PJs, and she tells him to get ready. So he jumps under the covers with her, and then there's a scene of Parker Posey putting a condom on Joaquin Phoenix. Astor's really trying to be as visceral as he can with this last few scenes. Beau is a little bit more in his head because he genuinely thinks he's going to die. Um, while I did say he hinted that he has the heart murmur early in the movie, he never actually disclosed to Elaine specifically that he has a heart murmur and could die from coming. I honestly did not realize how much of Beau's ballsack they show in this. Beau comes, and according to Parker Posey, he breaks the condom. Elaine immediately begins to finish herself off. I think Beau does come again, but he's like all like nut high, and he doesn't realize that Parker Posey is like stiff as a board on top of him. Like, I really want to say there's a solid 2 minutes of silence where Parker Posey is just sitting on top of Joaquin Phoenix. And then they really get some like uncomfortable shots where she's like just stiff as a board. If that wasn't bad enough for Beau as is, Patti LuPone isn't dead just yet. It would actually be such a power move if it wasn't so gross that Patti LuPone turns off the music and says, "No, please, continue as if I wasn't even here. I was dead a minute ago. This is a miracle." Okay, but she strides in looking good for this grumpy ass character that is a waste of her time on God's green earth. Patti LuPone begins to strip the bed as like two helpers come in and remove Parker Posey's corpse. They don't even like bat an eyelash. Like they wanted that to happen. So after Beau showers off, there is this line that did get a chuckle out of me where Patty Lupone tells Beau that you can tell your friend she's fired. Beau doesn't really pay attention to that. He just asks Patty how long this surveillance has been going on. She beats around the bush by asking Beau about his mental stability and his injuries that he's sustained throughout this entire movie. She asks Beau where he thinks he is. Beau responds, I'm in my house, and Patty responds, no, you're in my house, which is your house and will always be. But then you must know where you were, which I saw every second of. She tries to make him feel guilty for sleeping with Parker Posey a few days after her death. But Beau actually does not let this work because he does mention that he knew she wasn't dead. He recognized the birthmark on the hand of the corpse as one of his favorite housekeepers. Beau is initially pissed off because she gave 37 years of her life to his mother. However, Patty does mention that she paid off the rest of her family and extended relatives to be comfortable for the rest of their lives and then some. So, really, the housekeeper jumped at the opportunity to worth every one of Patty Lupone's pennies. For whatever reason, Mona/Patty still thinks that Beau is lying about the keys and bag, where if he was being surveillanced this entire time, she would know that he wasn't lying about it. Actually, let me read you this note because this goes into a little bit more detail than I actually feel like giving at the moment. Patty Lupone still thinks that Beau losing his keys and his luggage at the beginning of a movie was a lie. And then she kind of does what a lot of mothers tend to do, which is bring up shit from the past for no reason. She brings up how Beau once got her an album 2 years in a row and even got his school counselor the same music album too. She was complaining that he got her a kitchen set after she swore off cooking for good. She was pissed he never breastfed. And overall, she was just pissed that she thought he was never going to come in the first place. So Beau starts to do what is the right thing, and he starts to walk away. Mona berates him after that, being like he was always a prim and proper boy out in public, but when it came to actually stepping up to the plate, he never could and hid behind her. She does another manipulation tactic where she brings up how much she truly loves Beau by saying that her own mother never touched her, not even if it was to stomp her out if she was on fire. She goes on to say that when people ask how he's doing, she says, your guess is as good as mine. She says how she wishes that were true because of this whole security company thing. She knows everything Beau's doing. So she then proceeds to, commit what I believe is a HIPAA violation and show Beau his own therapy tapes. Oh, and that therapist comes out of the bathroom flushing that toilet smiling like a motherfucker. Yep. It's literally to a point that Beau's mom has a favorite episode. That favorite of which being Beau completely reciting the dream where his mother had locked his brother away into the attic. At this point, Beau just screams that all he wants out of this is the truth. So Mona tells him, you have to go to the attic. Beau responds, but nobody's allowed there. Beau is forced to go to the attic for his truth. He didn't think to tell her to go first. Come on, dude. Are you really that emotionally inept? Of course, as Patty shuts the attic door behind him, she, tells him that wasn't a dream, it was a memory, you dumbass. Conveniently enough, Beau has a flashlight when he gets up to the attic. He turns it on, and he's able to see his brother still alive, but definitely not there mentally. He's still wearing the clothes that he was shoved into the attic with. And right as some alarms begin to go off and some lights go up, you hear a very distorted voice say, Beau, my sweet boy. Like I said, the lights go up and you start to see a giant penis monster with praying mantis arms and the face of Domo. I paid to see this movie during a matinee. Jeeves is somehow still alive and does not pay attention to Beau whatsoever. He just goes ham stabbing those balls. Mind you, this man shot himself with a semi-automatic weapon. The man's a fucking unit. But the ball stabbing doesn't go on for very long because one of Beau's dad's little praying mantis hands just stabs right into Jeeves' head. Beau is fucking shocked now. He is almost catatonic and just going, oh! So Patty lets him out of the attic. And I'm so amazed with how hard over the head I'm being beat with the fact that Mona is not a good mom, because she lets him out of the attic, and instead of just being like, I fucking told you so, she starts to coddle Beau. Beau starts to apologize to Mona, saying he's been a bad boy. Mona takes the chance to completely just say, what the fuck do you think I had to go through to bring you into this world? You're selfish. Which is honestly like not an attribute I would put to Beau. Mona has a really long generic monologue about just like all the shit your mother does for the bare minimum. It's a really long generic monologue that a mother would give in one of these Ari Aster films, you know, all I do is work, slave, and defend you, and all I get back is that fucking face on your face. You know, recycled and done better previously. It's not what she said exactly, but it's the Toni Collette remix extended. Patty goes on to say that she hates Beau, and Beau rightfully strangles her. He doesn't strangle her to death, but he does strangle her enough to shock her into having a heart attack of her own, and she smashes through a terrarium. One thing I love about Patty, she really goes in on her own stunts. There's this really long shot of Beau walking away from the mansion into like this like grassy area. Then there's a lake and a boat. And this is where I genuinely thought the movie was going to end. You really begin to think Beau is about to sail off into the great unknown. But no, you start to see this random ass cave pop around in the distance, and Beau fucking drives into it for whatever reason. It kind of feels a bit like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride a little bit for like a minute and a half. Beau's boat comes to a shocking halt. A bunch of lights come up, and somehow Beau is encircled by this giant concrete stadium. Overhead, there is a jumbotron showing off all the main players. Over to Beau's left is Mona and her attorney. Beau is sitting helplessly on his boat, and then over to his right, he has his own attorney who doesn't get a microphone or anything. Mona's attorney goes on to pin Beau as this horrible child, saying that he would go off to feed ducks and fish versus help out a terrible beggar, using footage of the tattooed man chasing him into his apartment complex. Beau went shopping with Mona when he was like a little kid, and he hid behind some pillar that she didn't see him. So she was like running around, "Where's my baby boy? Where's my baby boy?" And she ended up tripping over her own feet. Mona's attorney ended up using that to be like, "Oh, he knew what the fuck he was doing this whole time." Also, sometime during Beau's teenage years, he was also pressured by his friends to do a panty raid of his mom's closet. This whole time, Beau's attorney is trying to speak on his behalf, but like because of no microphone, you can't hear jack shit. At some point, Mona's attorney decides to say that Beau left the suburban family house much sooner than he had anticipated. He had emphasized how these people were going to give Beau a ride, but Beau just up and abandoned them. And of course, bringing up Elaine, Patti LuPone has like one last freak out where she doesn't scream or anything, but she completely breaks a rail that she's holding onto as she's watching this entire process go down. Beau is magically stuck to his boat. He can't lift his legs whatsoever. He begs for help from anyone, and his boat just completely flips upside down. You hear a bunch of struggling for a hot minute. As the credits begin to roll, the audience that was in that stadium just slowly dissipates. And that was Beau is Afraid. Addendum. Now, when I started this video, I brought up this whole topic about seeing a random new movie trailer and it giving you a sense of hope. Where I was in my life at this time when this trailer had dropped, I was severely struggling with the possibility that I could be living with schizophrenia. I was very scared to go to a doctor. I did not want to become a pill popper. You know, watching the trailer, I got this impression of this guy got hit by somebody in his own family. He's struggling with the concept of having to come back home, struggling with his inner demons, with whatever's going on in his head. And more so, the horror would stem from what is going on in Beau's head. Meanwhile, the comedy could come from his interactions with his family that he's been reunited with. And at the time I saw that trailer through that point of view, I was extremely hopeful that I had a piece of art that could sum up exactly how I felt around my family at that time. But you know, that's not what I got. Instead, you get this self-described odyssey of shit that doesn't actually happen and doesn't have a payoff. Also, Patti LuPone did not appear in this trailer whatsoever. The only other character that's really focused on besides Joaquin Phoenix is Nathan Lane's character narrating the fact that Beau is scared to go home. Also, the lightheartedness of Goodbye Stranger really did not That was a poor choice of music for the trailer. I mean, sure, I could pin this down as my expectations not getting met. That doesn't stop the fact that this movie sucked balls. The past few years this movie has been out, whenever I have ever gotten the chance to talk about it with somebody, they either have never seen anything about it or they have and they thought it was boring as shit. Rightfully so. But I'm so happy whenever I get to run into somebody who does not know the plot of this movie whatsoever, mostly because I get to shit talk that Vincent Van Gogh scene so much. I will say it was a ballsy move for Aster to put a mid-series catch-up in the movie. No, I don't think I've ever come across that before, genuinely. As of recording, the last impression that this movie has left me with is that Ari Aster wants to break his mom. Like, I did some Google searching to see if he's stepped forward as a victim of any sort or if he has any friends of this kind of trauma. And if he ever does in the future, I genuinely do apologize and thank you very much for the art that you have brought on this world out of your pain. Till then, please stop making movies. I refuse to talk about this movie anymore. I've invested roughly 12 and a half hours into this. 3 hours of the initial watching when I wanted to. Uh, a good 6 hour. I genuinely doubled the time of watching the movie to take my notes. And then yeah, now writing this down. Um, the thing that truly inspired me to make this video, or actually just sit down and finally record it, was my friend letting me know that he walked out of Eddington 45 minutes in. But what do I know? I'm just some dude with a puffball on his hat. In the meantime, please let me know if there's any movies that you have carried a multi-year vendetta against. I certainly would love to hear it. Maybe add some to the list. I got quite a few movies where I I feel like I'm the only person who still remembers them, and I know that's such a chauvinistic thing to say. Um, but let's see. If you sat through the entirety of this rant, I genuinely want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if any more videos are to come from the future, till then, and may we meet again in another time and place.